Well, it looks like all our board members are here. We could start with the call to order and the roll call. If anybody has an objection, they could let me know.
Yeah.
Everybody's okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'll call the meeting of the, I have the Saturday agenda. Okay, I'll call the meeting of December 9, regular meeting of the Township Board to order. And I will call the roll. Aldrich,
Here.
Bigford,
Here.
Helmrich,
Here.
Marcy,
Here.
Osmond, here. We have a quorum. I don't know the next item because I lost my agenda.
Zoom instructions.
Instructions from Mr. Graham, please.
Absolutely. Thank you and welcome everyone. Appreciate you joining us. Before we get going, like we have been throughout this year, we're going to take just a quick minute to go over a few Zoom instructions to hopefully help make this meeting run as smooth as possible. First off, please say your name before speaking. Please mute yourself when you're not speaking. If you're joining us via telephone, *6 is the code for mute and unmute on most telephones. Please do not click any unknown links that may be shared in the chat feature during the meeting. The township does not plan to communicate with anyone via that method. So any links shared that way should be viewed with a certain level of caution. This meeting is being recorded and will be available on YouTube at some point tomorrow. I normally can get those up pretty early in the day. Please be respectful of those speaking and do not interrupt. And if anyone is disruptive to the point of preventing the township board from conducting their business, you'll get one warning from me before being removed from the meeting. This hasn't been an issue, and we've been holding meetings via Zoom for several months now, but just as a friendly FYI to everyone. And then lastly, please be patient as we work through public comment sessions and the rest of the meeting. We're all still learning a new way to conduct these meetings, and we will attempt to be as deliberate as possible as we get through this as a team. So if there are any questions about how this Zoom meeting will work, please let me know at this time. Otherwise, Madam Supervisor, the floor is yours.
I have a question.
Okay.
This is my first time doing anything like this. Since I'll be offering a public comment, do I need to stay for the entirety of the meeting, or is that up to my discretion, or how does that work?
Sure, good question. That's up to you. There's a public comment period at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting. You're welcome to speak at both or one of them. When we get to that point, I'll go over a few more instructions of how specifically public comment will work, but there's nothing that says you need to stay. That's up to you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
Mr. Graham, can you help me with our next agenda item? I really have lost my agenda. I had it a minute ago, but it's gone.
Absolutely. We're on to approval of the agenda.
Okay, approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any comments, deletions, additions?
No.
Do I have a motion?
This is Marcy. I move to approve the agenda as presented and to ratify the ratify the procedures for public participation and meeting conduct as described in the notice of public meeting via video conference.
Is there
I will
support?
second that.
Moved
Aldrich.
moved by Marcy, second by Aldrich. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Marcy,
Yes.
Aldrich,
Yes.
Bigford,
Yes.
Helmut,
Yes.
and Osman, yes. Motion carries. Are we financial report or?
On to public comment.
Okay, let's open the public comment section of the meeting. And if you would like to speak, please either raise your hand, check the raise your hand box on your screen, or otherwise let us know that you would like to speak. Mr. Graham, do you have anybody with a raised hand?
Yep, Lori Goshorn.
Lori, you have the floor.
Sorry about that. Okay. Yes, my name is Lori Gosshorn. I live at 3512 64th Street, and I sit on the Township Parks Commission. And I just wanted to voice that I think it's imperative that the Saugatuck Township, as the local municipality responsible for implementing and enforcing zoning laws and construction ordinances, to consider all feasible, quote, measures to avoid, minimize, and mitigate potential effects on the traditional cultural property, end quote. This board has many options to avoid, minimize, and avoid negative effects. As a township resident, I'm asking you to take action tonight to 1, appoint a historic district committee. 2, to appoint a committee to review and recommend a natural river or environmental area designation. And 3, to ask the Planning Commission to contextualize the language of Section 4-910H. You all have an enormous responsibility, and I understand that, and it's to protect the Kalamazoo River mouth. You have our support as a community. Please do the right thing, and that is why we elected you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Is there someone else who would like to make a public comment?
Yes, my name's Dan Kaywood.
Dan, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'm part of a group of people here in Allegan County. We're trying to get it passed. There's 62 other counties in Michigan that already have the ORV ordinance passed. We're trying to do that in our county as well. And we have been going in front of all the other townships, a lot of them. And now we're before you. I believe you've been sent a copy of the resolutions back in July, I believe it was. And Scott Beltman should be on here too. He can confirm these dates that the county commissioners decided to make it township by township instead of them actually doing it countywide. And that's going to make some enforcement difficulties and stuff. So we're coming before you guys, excuse me, to push for a resolution that you should have that states that the townships would prefer to see it countywide rather than township wide. And I've seen that Bob Meyer is also on this line, and he's from Lake County. He's an officer up there who's in charge of their ORV and can answer any questions that you might have due to this. I know this isn't on your agenda, but we would like to ask that next month it could be. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Is there anybody else that would like to make a public comment? I saw Nicholas had his hand raised a little bit ago.
Yes.
Nick, you have the floor.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Nicholas Wallace, and my address is 3524 North Dugout Road, Saugatuck Township. I've grown up in a historic cottage along the road, and during that time, I've spent thousands of hours kayaking on the river, fishing, and hiking the critical dune land of the river mouth. I'm very familiar with the ecology of this exceedingly rare habitat that is the river mouth, and this passion drove me to study biology, ecology, and environmental science at the University of Illinois at Chicago. I've read the documents submitted by the SDCA, and I strongly encourage the board to appoint committees this evening to begin the process of considering a historic district, as well as designation of the river mouth as a natural river and critical environmental area. Given my background in the area and field of study, I am offering to sit on either of those committees. I also implore a contextualization of the phrasing, quote, "in no event," end quote, in section 40-910H. Thank you, and please do the right thing to take the responsible approach and protect the tribal cultural landscape and the extremely rare habitat of the Kalamazoo River mouth, the river, the lake sturgeon, the dunes, and the conglomerate of other native flora and fauna that reside in Southwest Michigan. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Mr. Graham, is there anyone else with a hand raised?
Yes, Scott Beltman has his hand raised.
How about, okay.
Scott Waltman, you have the floor.
Good evening. I addressed your board back in September, and that's when I provided you with a copy of that resolution. First off, just to give you an update where we're at going through the county, we've had 20 townships take action on that resolution, and so far 19 have approved it. The 4 that have yet to take action on it is Saugatuck, Lake Town, Gun Plain, and Wayland. And we'd like to see you guys put that on the agenda for the January meeting. It makes sense with the other townships from an enforcement standpoint to do this ORV ordinance countywide. And I would hope to think Saugatuck Township could be a part of it as well. There's a very good track record with this ordinance in other counties and other areas that had it. And that's why Bob Myers is here to just to give you a little bit of background from a law enforcement standpoint on how that ordinance has been going. So I'd like you to consider that, and we'll be providing your board some more information throughout the next several weeks here to give you all the information you need to make a decision on the resolution that we're presenting. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Mr. Graham, is there anybody else with a hand raised?
Yep, Cynthia McKean.
Cynthia, you have the floor.
Thank you. I would like to read into the record the letter that I wrote to the township. I would like the township to create an historic district committee. It's very exciting that the township is considering the creation of an historic district committee. Keeping current with all of the governmental agencies and their responsibilities is difficult at best and continues to get more complex. If we intend to preserve our natural, historic, and archaeological surroundings, it is imperative that we keep this need front and center. By helping the township stay on track, not only will the Township Historic District Committee be instrumental in serving this purpose, but it will also help prevent the township from unknowingly making very expensive mistakes that inevitably wind up in court due to a lack of understanding of governmental rules and regulations. As chair of the Saugatuck Planning Commission, I was a member of the Tri-Community Committee of three from Saugatuck Township, 3 from City of Saugatuck, and 3 from Village of Douglas, that drafted the original Tri-Community Master Plan, which is still evolving and in use today. The Township Historic District Committee will enhance this continued effort to guard our most valuable natural, historic, and archaeological resources. The tri-community we live in has worldwide recognition as an artistic community in a pristine environment. It is hard to imagine the total negativity of the effect on the Oxbow School of Art and the community as a whole if the natural habitat in and around is developed. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Cynthia. Mr. Graham, do you see any other hands raised?
Bob Myers.
Bob Myers, you have the floor.
Thank you for letting me speak. I'll make it brief. Just wanted to make myself a source to the board in the township and anyone attending the meeting who may have some questions. I'm not an expert on ORV ordinance. However, I've been involved with it since 2009 in Lake County, Michigan. And I've also written our own and introduced our own ordinance to our board here in township, which is Mason County, Michigan. And I've also attended other meetings here within the last few months in Manistee County to assist them. I like to be a source of law enforcement. So I'm the guy who rides, I'm the guy who writes tickets, I'm the guy who helps write ordinances. And I just want everyone to have a quality experience with these ordinances and give something to the constituents, because I would say in your area, most of your
I think we lost Mr. Meyer. In the meantime, Tracy has her hand raised and we can see if Mr. Meyer joins the meeting again.
My name is, can you hear me? My name is
Yes.
Tracy Shafroth. I live at 271 Water Street in Douglas. I have many colleagues who are on this call and have spoken already. I would like to support those comments and not reiterate them and take up more time. Those of Lori and Cynthia and Nicholas concerning the harbor mouth. Rather than repeat all that has been presented, I'd like to bring a few things to light that haven't been brought to light yet. In addition to the National Trust for Historic Preservation Award in, I think it was 27, there has been a lot of recognition of this landscape and this land as an incredibly important special place. In 2011, the Cultural Landscape Foundation, which is a national organization that works to preserve the landscape heritage in special places around the country, gave the Landslide Award, I love that name, to the Saugatuck Dunes. They define cultural landscapes as places of significant historic nature and ones that are threatened. The Cultural Landscape Foundation is a respected organization that gives out only a few awards each year, and our historically rich dunes were chosen. Each year, the Field Museum of Chicago, which is probably one of the top 3 natural history museums in the country, gives the prestigious Parker Gentry Award to a person who has had a significant impact on preserving the world's cultural and national heritage. These awards have recognized scientists in the heart of the Andes Amazon region in South America and the Great Barrier Reef. In 2019, the Gun Lake tribe of the Potawatomi tribe was recognized for their work in the Great Lakes, including their work at the mouth of the Kalamazoo River. The tribe has developed a model of conservation that is considered to be global in nature. Both of these awards recognize that this is not just a local issue about a ho-hum harbor mouth. That harbor mouth and those dunes have been studied for decades, recognized for their importance, and they deserve protection. It's quite something that our little town, our little community has had all of this attention from national and international organizations. So I just ask you to keep that in mind as your decisions are made and to do the right thing. We can't lose this fight. These are important places that we have responsibility for and owe respect for. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracy. Is there anyone else that would like to
Ma-
make a public comment? Mr.
Madam Supervisor, I do see that Bob Meyer is back on the call. Mr. Meyer, you dropped off a minute ago. Did you have an additional comment, or would you like to finish your comment?
I'll just finish it up that I'd like to be a resource for your board and your constituents, and hopefully be able to answer some questions for things that have worked for us and haven't worked for us, and some changes we made, so that you guys can look forward to a good quality decision and hopefully join the resolution and be part of the county ordinance. Thank you.
Thank
Bob.
you.
Mr. Griffin, do we have anyone else that's ready to make a public comment?
Jim Cook here. I'd like to.
Jim, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'll skip over, well, first of all, I'm James Cook. I live at 3507 64th Street in the township. And I certainly concur with a lot of the comments that have already been made, so I'll skip over much of what I could say to just repeat that. But it is encouraging to see that the idea of a Township Historic District Commission is gaining support in just the few months since it was proposed to the board. For many reasons, creation of such a commission is a reasonable step for the township. Consideration of the mouth of the Kalamazoo is most immediately apparent, but there will likely be other candidates for consideration as historical sites, and we should be prepared to deal with them properly. There are no do-overs. 10 years ago, the Saugatuck Douglas Historical Society issued a policy statement regarding historical sites. It's particularly relevant to the creation of a Historic District Commission. I do have the whole thing here. I submitted it to the board, but my submission was quite late, so you don't have it in your packet. I'll jump over a bunch of it. It's not that long, but the gist of it all is that the built environments of our towns and the natural lands, vistas, and historic and archaeological sites of the Lake Michigan lakeshore and along the Kalamazoo River are irreplaceable assets. They are vital to the quality of the community's cultural life as well as to its economy. The society asserts that any development that devalues the historic townscape, landscape, or view sheds, or diminishes our ability to understand or commemorate our varied history should be considered a taking from the people of the region. The society urges local, state, and federal governments to recognize the significance of these unique historic assets and to protect them from development or activities that would either alter the area's character or appearance. The choices we make today have long-lasting repercussions by which history will judge us. We must act wisely and with commitment to provide future generations with a strong and meaningful heritage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Mr. Graham, is there anyone else that's on your list?
Not at this time. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken who would like to speak?
David Swan is on. I would like to make a brief statement, if that's okay.
David, you have the floor.
Thanks. My name is David Swan. I live at 345 Griffith and Saugatuck. I am speaking tonight at the request of neighbors to Pine Trail Camp in the Van Horn sand dune mining operation. They've submitted a letter this afternoon. This neighbor group that has submitted a letter is requesting the Township Board to ask the Planning Commission to contextualize the language in section 4910H, to contextualize that threshold phrase in no event, to clarify that in no event means never and without exception, including with PUDs, SAUs, sand dune mining operations, and any and all actions that require a permit, a local permit, county permit, state permit, or federal permit. Section 910H is not part of any current litigation, nor was it considered with the North Shore of Saugatuck permit. So it should be ripe for clarification. The threshold phrase in this ordinance needs to be clarified, especially when we consider the North Shore of Saugatuck proposed boat basin is 1,600 feet long. The Van Horn Pond is 1,600 feet from the Kalamazoo River. North Shore of Saugatuck Rather, the owner of North Shore of Saugatuck owns an option on Pine Trail Camp, which separates the Kalamazoo River from the Van Horn Pond. The township needs to clarify section 4910H to ensure there is not another canal or channel in the traditional cultural landscape. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swan. Mr. Graham, do you see anyone else with a hand raised?
No one with a hand raised. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Carl Gabriels?
Yes, thank you, Cindy. Carl Gabriels on behalf of North Shores of Saugatuck. There's been a lot of comments about this traditional cultural properties designation by the keeper of the registry. And I guess I just wanted to caution the board in moving forward with any action that the board decides to take, to keep in mind the immense scope of what has been labeled as the TCP. This is not simply a TCP that covers the actual Army Corps channel or the cove or even the first part of the river. This covers 20 some square miles, the entire city of Saugatuck, the entire city of Douglas, all the way out to New Richmond, down to 128th Avenue. It is extremely large. And so as a designation of the TCP, it already brings with it a number of additional restrictions and bureaucratic steps that will be involved at any time that a federal action becomes necessary by any property owner or municipality within that TCP, including if the township were ever to seek federal funding for any project, or any waterfront owner needs a permit to put a dock in, or the tri-community decides to dredge the river. All of these activities involve federal funding or federal approvals, and now there will be another step involved. So as the township is even considering additional actions to put restrictions or other requirements on the TCP, just keep that in mind, that the extreme number of property owners, township members, residents that would be burdened by those restrictions. Protecting historic properties certainly is important and should be done properly, but not, it should be done carefully as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gabriels. Is there anyone with a hand raised that I can't see?
So, someone's called in with a phone number ending in 0684 who's muted. Are they looking to speak? If you want to unmute a phone, it's *6.
That's Kathy. Oh, there, she got it.
Okay, Kathy, you have the floor, but you have to unmute by pressing *6. Mr. Graham, could you unmute her or not with a phone?
I've asked to unmute, but she will still have to accept that.
Okay. We'll give her a few more seconds.
Okay. In the meantime, is there anyone else who has not spoken yet who would like to speak during this public comment period? There will be a second public comment period at the end of the meeting. Okay.
Okay.
One more time, phone number ending in 0684. If you're looking to speak, please press *6 on your phone keypad. That would unmute you.
It's not working. She just texted me. Do you want me to read her letter, or is that?
I think that she's made significant effort that it would be appropriate for you to read her public comment.
Okay, this is from Kathy Sturm, 2579 62nd Street in Saugatuck Township. I have read letters regarding establishing a historic district.
While I agree, I feel it is important to have a committee established and that the committee seek guidance and guidelines from appropriate state and national organizations. Then have that committee present a formal proposal of several sites that are in need and want a preservation. This is not an offer by me to step forward, just voicing my concern. We have more endangered landscapes than architecture, so it would be different than other local historic districts that involve architecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Is there anyone else that would like to take this opportunity to comment in the public comment section? Hearing none, we will move on to the next section, which is review of invoices. Mr. Graham, do you have anything to add to this?
I do not, unless there's specific questions from anyone on the township board.
All right, then I will entertain a motion.
This is Aldrich. I move to approve all bills and payroll in the amount of $92,119.02 as presented.
Is there support?
I'll support.
Motion by Aldrich, supported by Helmrich. Is there any discussion? I'll call the roll. Aldrich?
Yes.
Helmrich?
Yes.
Marcy?
Yes.
Osmond? Yes. Bigford?
Yes.
Motion carries. Our next item is our treasurer's report. Mr. Helmrich, would you like to talk about what you've got in your treasurer's report?
I'd be happy to. Thank you. Yes, start with the general fund bank balance is holding at $1.7 million, which is flat to last month. Total revenue year to date is running about 20% below budget, and year to date expenses are 24% below budget. So they're in sync. I did want to point out, no one had questions, but there were a couple significant payments we approved that we can cover handily, and I just want us all to be aware of them. One was the tree removals from the cemetery, which is almost $16,000. That's been taken care of and transacted. They also did a great job, by the way. And I think there weren't that many, but we should just know. Hold on. Boom. That might have been the most significant one. I do have the mark. Yes, and the improvements to the River Bluff Pavilion roof were completed. And those are the ones I wanted to point out. But even having said that, those significant amounts, we still are under budget for expenses. If you look at the general fund only, revenue is 7% below budget. And we did start collecting winter taxes last Monday, so the township funds will start showing a positive effect to that action. I can attest, I wrote this report before a week later today. Tax payments are pouring in a volume I've never experienced. It's felt more like the end run before they're due in February. People are paying right away and early, it's a good sign. It's a bit of a challenge administratively, but I'm handling it. And back to the budget for a second, more good news, no departmental overages at all to discuss. On the investment side, our one certificate of deposit at TCF Bank is holding at $763,000, which is exactly flat to where it was a month ago. Our class account, you might remember, that's the statewide pool for municipalities for investing that we moved $1 million into from our general fund checking account 3 months ago. That's at $1,126,000. So it's made a little bit of money. And it's up $70. But I did want to mention, making that move and even holding on to the CD, we still have, in the last 3 months, we've increased the total value of our investments by 30%, which is pretty remarkable. Clerk Bigford and I spent most of yesterday morning on phone calls with municipal advisors that we have been in contact with for several months. And we expect to be making some movement in January. Probably what we're going to do is cash out the CD at TCF Bank because the interest rate is going down and matures next Monday. I plan to liquidate that this Friday, and then we will be making decisions on how to invest those funds into hopefully some more positive performing municipal bonds and other like products. I mentioned winter tax bills all went out on time on December 1st. I've already mentioned payments. And the good news, I do want to point out, people are paying attention to the treasurer's newsletter that goes in their bills. They're mailing them in. And even the ones that do come to the office are using the drop slot, and no one is complaining about that. And that's how we want to keep it during COVID. And let's see, on another front, I made actually just yesterday the final summer tax disbursement to our taxing partners, which I need the board to vote to approve on. This was payment 9 for, actually, is that the right one? Yeah, I'm sorry, $89,000. That date's wrong, I'm sorry. That was 12/7. That's the final summer. Winters will start in a couple weeks, but I would like to make a motion to approve summer payment number 9, which was transacted on December 7th in the amount of $89,000.
Motion by Helmrich, is there support?
This is Marcy, I'll support.
Okay, motion by Helmrich, supported by Marcy. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Helmrich,
Yes.
Marcy,
Yes.
Osman, yes. Aldrich,
Yes.
Bigford,
Yes.
motion carries.
And
Any more of your report?
thank you, unless you have any questions.
Okay, I'll find my agenda back. Treasurer's report. Approval of the minutes, November 11, 2020, the regular meeting. Also the December 5 meeting, special meeting.
Oh,
Can this be one motion or does it have to be 2?
It can be one single motion.
Okay. You want to go ahead, Stacy?
oh, okay. I move to approve the minutes of the November 11th, 2020 regular meeting and December 5th, 2020 special meeting as presented.
Is there support?
I'll support.
Motion by Aldrich, support by Helmrich. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Aldrich,
Yes.
Helmrich,
Yes.
Marcy. Marcy,
Yes.
Osman, yes. Bigford,
Yes.
motion carries. And correspondence, we have some correspondence. Mr. Griffin, could you just give us a brief summary of correspondence?
I will do the best I can. There were several correspondence, several of which were included in the packet, several others which came in after the packet deadline that are also included on this list. I know Mr. Cook also mentioned that he sent something in. I apologize, that's not something I have seen prior to the meeting. But similarly to the array of public comments, most of the written correspondence that were submitted were in regard to a historic preservation committee and or the township board's consideration of additional comments to the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions about the correspondence? Is there a motion to accept as information?
Me too. Cindy, in the past, we've just accepted it. We've not taken action on correspondence.
Okay, we'll just accept it as information. There is no unfinished business, so we'll go straight to new business. We have the 2021 Township Board meeting schedule. That's the second Wednesday of each month. Is there any discussion about that? Would someone like to make a motion to adopt the board meeting schedule?
I will move to approve the adoption of resolution number 2020-14, a resolution setting the 2021 meeting schedule of the Saugatuck Township Board, and to confirm that regular meetings in 2021 will be held on the second Wednesday of every month.
Thank you. Is there support?
This is Bigford. I'll support.
We have motion by Aldrich, support by Bigford. Is there any discussion? I'll go ahead and call the roll. Aldrich,
Yes.
Bigford,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Marcy,
Yes.
Osmond, yes. Motion carries. So our next item is the poverty exemption guidelines. We adopt these every year for the people below the poverty limit, can be accepted from property tax, some or all of their property tax. So in the past, we've always accepted the federal poverty guidelines. Is there any discussion? Any comments? Mr. Graham, do you have anything to add?
I don't, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Graham? If not, I will hear a motion.
I will move to approve the adoption of resolution number 2020-15, a resolution to adopt poverty exemption income guidelines and asset tests, and the updated poverty exemption application form as presented.
Is there support?
This is Bigford. I'll support.
We have motion by Helmrich, supported by Bigford. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Helmrich,
Yes.
Bigford,
Yes.
Osmond, yes. Marcy,
Yes.
Aldrich,
Yes.
motion carries. We have adopted the federal guidelines. We have an updated COVID-19 preparedness and response plan that has been prepared for us to consider. COVID is an ever-changing item. It doesn't seem to stay it doesn't seem to stay static at any time. It changes from day to day and hour to hour. So Mr. Graham has thoughtfully prepared some amendments to our policy for the COVID-19 plan. Mr. Graham, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that?
No, I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Hearing no questions, do I have a motion?
I move to confirm the updated COVID-19 preparedness and response plan dated November 20, 2020 as presented and prepared by the township manager.
Thank you. Does there support?
This is Marcy. I'll support.
Okay, motion by Aldrich, supported by Marcy. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Aldrich. Aldrich? Stacy Aldrich. Okay, I'll start with Marcy.
Yes. Yes.
And yes.
Osmond. Yes, and Aldrich.
Bigford.
I thought I called Bigford, but okay, Bigford.
Yes. Can you not hear me?
And for the record, I'll vote yes. I didn't hear my name.
Can you
Okay.
vote? I mean, can you hear me or?
Yeah.
Yes, now, we
Oh.
couldn't before.
Oh, okay. I think I might be having issues. I might be switching to a different method here.
It might be mine as well, because as you know, I have the worst internet connection of anyone, but
Okay.
motion carries. And we'll move on to the next item, resolution of support for the CZM grant application. The Ottawa County Commission has adopted or is applying for a grant and would like support for the grant to manage the coastal erosion situation. Mr. Graham, would you like to elaborate?
I'm happy to. In short, the township continues to work closely with the Allegan County Road Commission on both short and long-term options for Lakeshore Drive. This resolution before you all is to demonstrate the township and the township's board's support of those activities, specifically related to an application to the Coastal Zone Management Program, seeking funding for a feasibility study, cost-benefit analysis, and alternatives analysis related to the planned retreat of segments of Lakeshore Drive. The goal of this work would be to eventually serve as justification for future grant applications that could then be used for construction work. We're following a method used by several other communities in the state, notably the Marquette area and the Upper Peninsula, when they coincidentally also moved a road called Lakeshore Drive. With that, I would just like to thank the Road Commission. They've really taken a leadership role in regard to this work, and the township's done what we can to help. At this point, the township's not being asked to contribute financially. The resolution does outline some in-kind services, specifically in regard to staff time for some public engagement and public information sessions that will be held should the grant be awarded. But with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions, and would just say I'm really excited to see a concrete step forward when it comes to continuing to try to find a long-term solution for Lakeshore Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Are there any questions for Mr. Graham? Anybody like to make a motion?
This is Bigford. I'll move to approve the adoption of resolution number 2020-16, a resolution supporting the Allegan County Road Commission's submission of coastal management grant application related to Lakeshore Drive in Saugatuck Township as presented.
Thank you. Motion by Bigford. Is there support?
I'll support.
Support by Helmrich. Any discussion? Bigford.
Yes.
Helmrich.
Yes.
Aldrich.
Yes.
Marcy.
Yes.
Osmond, yes. Motion carries.
I'd like to just comment for a second and thank Manager Graham. I mean, as we all know, he's been working so hard and diligently for the last year or so on the Lakeshore Drive issue. And I also want to underscore something he said, but I think this is a major step forward for the township in terms of cementing a much stronger relationship with the County Road Commission, and also taking a big step, which we've all been hoping to see us do, which is to get into the grant application world, which is a challenging one. And we know, there have been 1 or 2 grants, I think, to the township in the past, and it continues to be an area we want to explore more, but it's very time and labor intensive. But I think this is a real step in that direction. And if the grant is awarded, then a real feather in everyone's cap. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Helmrich. Is there any more comments? Then we will move on to invitation for additional comments on Section 106 review, North Shores of Saugatuck Marina Development. Mr. Graham, could you start us off on this item?
I would be happy to. Included in the packet is a relatively brief summary prepared for you all to really highlight the developments related to this situation since the township's initial comments in February earlier this year. Since then, there's really been two notable developments. The first is in regard to the United States Army Corps of Engineers expanding the project area. And the second notable development is in regard to the Kalamazoo River mouth and its determination for potential inclusion in the National Register of Historic Places. I would like to share that obviously in regard to a situation like this, there's a lot of detail. So I do the best I can to answer any questions, but I would just like to highlight what is being brought before you all today, and that is the question of whether or not the township board would like our organization to submit additional comments to the Army Corps as has been requested in a letter dated November 18th, 2020 from the Army Corps of Engineers, which is also included in your packet. But with that, I think it'd probably be best if I'm just here to answer any questions you all may have. But other than that, please refer to the memo included in the packet in terms of a brief timeline, and I'd be happy to do what I can to help.
Okay, is there any comments or questions for Mr. Graham?
Well, I'd like to comment that I agree with what's spelled out in this overview document. I think the way this was handled back in February in a similar situation we did the right thing. It went very smoothly. And I just want to underscore, as I did back in February, that unlike in past board activities and requests, I think when a federal agency, especially one as vital as and important to this area and all of the Great Lakes region, as the Army Corps of Engineers reaches out to a municipality to offer this opportunity, I think it's imperative that we take it, especially when it's relative to such a vital treasure and natural resource. So I support moving forward with this type of motion. And my question would be to my colleagues is, if we do make this motion, which two of us can get to work tomorrow or Friday with Manager Graham to make the deadline of December 18th.
Mr. Helmrich, would you suggest any additions to our February response? And if so, what might they be?
Well, I think it's a different response this time. And I think stating what they are is part of what the two board members and the manager will determine in the next few days. I will say, I think our response probably could be shorter and more succinct this time around, but I do think it's imperative that we offer a response to them.
So you think there might be additions or other information that we want to respond with? Or...
Well, I think it's a different kind of response. They're asking a very specific, response here versus what we replied to before, which was broader and contained more historic in terms of the township and the relationship aspects that we're dealing with. I think, as I said, I think this can be more succinct and to the point relative to showing support or not of their efforts to consider what's been submitted by the tribal groups and others.
I would tend to agree with you. I would think that we could submit our original response and say that we continue to support that and include copies of the information that we received from other groups that were interested in it. I'm not sure that's what you're thinking, but that kind of was what was running through my mind.
Well, I think sounds to me like the answer is a combination of the two. I was focusing more on what maybe now you're referring to as a cover letter. I just didn't think we should say, here's what we said in February, nothing's changed, because some things have changed a little bit. So I think that can be addressed in a succinct cover letter. And if we send those support documents along with it as well, yeah, I see no reason not to.
Okay, so do we need to do anything to to appoint two parties to review and send this to the city manager, or can we just do it informally as an ad hoc committee?
Well, I think we should go with a motion and find out tonight who among us has some time to take with Mr. Graham and the attorney in the next couple of days to put this together. If there's any volunteers or suggestions.
Are you interested, John, on doing that, or are you just way too busy with the taxes and
Well,
stuff?
I mean, yes and yes, but I welcome others.
I mean, I'll do it too if you want, but I think you're the one that probably knows more what you want to, what we should have more experience in this than I do. So I would like your input if you would be willing to do it again, but if you're too busy.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yeah.
I just want to share with everyone, you know, as we've done this in the past, just in terms of the time commitment of board members, when we've prepared letters like this, specifically in February, or other communications on behalf of the township board, the normal process has been staff. So in this situation, the township manager and the township attorney will prepare a first draft for review by whoever those individuals are and comment and amendment from there. So just in terms of the time commitment for any of you, again, if we're going to do this similarly to how we have in the past, the expectation isn't that you're going to be writing a letter. We'll write the letter, and we're more just looking for your review, edits, feedback, so on and so forth.
There's probably at most 1 or 2 Zoom calls once there's a draft to react to.
Right.
Sure. I'm going to hesitate a little bit just because I haven't spoken with the township attorney at this level of detail, but as we have in the past, my expectation would be we would start working on a draft as early as tomorrow. If that's the direction the township board decides to go, would try to have a draft to whoever is putting those positions early next week. And yes, as you mentioned, have some meetings, make some edits and move forward to hit that deadline. But I've agreed with what's been said. I don't anticipate, should the township board direct us to prepare additional comments, that they would be near at the length of the February comments.
Mm-hmm.
I would support that concept, that we're really just reiterating what we said in February. We still think that's important, and we still will be monitoring the situation closely. And these are the communications we received from other organizations. John?
What?
Do you have any comment on that?
No, does anyone else want to participate?
I'll do it.
Good, Stacy will do it. It will be John and Stacy.
Cindy, did I hear you saying, I understand what you're saying. I just want to make sure, well, I think I do. I want to just make sure that you're hoping that it, or suggesting that we just reiterate what we've said and that we're tracking it, or would you be open to, if there are any other input that we want to give to the Army Corps, would you be open to that?
Definitely, most definitely.
Yeah, I see that. That's the purpose of the cover letter.
Are you interested in that, Abby? Because if you want to do it, it's fine with me. I mean, I'm just volunteering.
So we would still have, you guys prepare the letter, and then that still comes to all the board members, correct?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on that because in the overview memo, it says there's not time for full board review, but I think it's important that everyone see it before it's transmitted. I don't see why we can't do that.
And then we individually just.
We would need to schedule a special meeting at that point.
Could it not go?
Again, that's the process we've done in the past is because without a special meeting, that there's really not an appropriate method for the entire board to be able to review and comment. I think why we did it the way we did in February and why it was proposed this way again would be you all would appoint 2 people who would essentially give the thumbs up on the letter prepared by staff. If you all as a board would like to review and comment, we could schedule a special meeting before next Friday, but that's at all of your discretion.
Yeah, I can't review anything or look at it until next week. I'm
Well, we're talking about next week.
Well, I don't think we want a special meeting. Last time we just trusted John, and who else did it? Maybe Abby, were you on that?
Cindy.
Oh, Cindy, do you want to do it again, Cindy, or?
I'd be willing to do it. I would have to do most of it on Saturday, but that would be okay with me.
I mean, I don't care, I'll do it, but I just want you to, who you feel most comfortable and knows the most about it, so.
I feel very comfortable with you and John.
Okay. I think we can do it if everybody's open to that.
I support that idea
Yeah.
of having Aldrich, Helmrich, Graham, and legal counsel prepare that.
Is that a motion?
No.
Would someone like to make a motion?
This is Marcy. I'll move. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I move to authorize and direct the township manager, township attorney, and trustees Stacy Aldrich and John Helmrich to prepare and submit additional written comments as part of the historic properties review for the North Shores Marina project for submission to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Is there support?
I'll support.
We have motion by Marcy, supported by Aldrich to direct city manager or township manager as described. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Marcy?
Yes.
Aldrich?
Yes.
Bigford?
Yes.
Helmrich?
Yes.
Osmond, yes. Motion carries. And we'll move on to our next.
Can I ask a question to Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Could this possibly mean that Ms. Aldrich and myself would get an extension on when our next survey is due for the board strategy? I'm being a smart ass, but
I can fill yours out, John, if you want.
that deadline's Wednesday too.
I submitted mine already.
It's definitely a busy time for all of you. I mean, I think we'll do the best we can to get
What's
through all
the
of it.
penalty if we're late?
I submitted mine
I'm
already.
gonna chase you down. You're gonna have to deal with me harassing you with phone calls and emails.
Fate worse than death.
There you go.
Okay, our next item of new business is the designated assessor appointment. This is a result of some assessing reforms that were done a couple of years ago in order to have more consistent assessing statements across the entire state. It is not moved to designate the county as our assessor. It allows us to keep our local assessor, but, and if you read through the packet, which was a little bit long, what it does really is put in place a mechanism for if the assessing is out of compliance with the COMMA standards, then the assessor, the designated assessor, can come in and offer assistance in getting us back in compliance. I don't see that happening, but that's the whole point, to make every assessing district across the state consistent with other assessments. So, Mr. Graham, do you have anything to add to that?
Not really. I would, I guess, just more reiterate or clarify what the specific action you all are being asked today. As the supervisor mentioned, Allegan County, as required by these recent reforms, appointed Matt Wolford, the equalization director, to the position of designated assessor. What's being asked of you all tonight is to enter into an interlocal agreement and designated assessor contract, which really just outlines, in the case the township does need to utilize those services, how that would go. So what you're being asked to do tonight, or to consider tonight, is an interlocal agreement and designated assessor contract. It has been reviewed by the township's legal counsel, and there were no concerns at that time.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that, because I was talking to Mr. Graham a lot about this the other day, that our own township assessor, Kyle Harris, is very versed in all this action and has discussed this with Mr. Graham and is comfortable with all of it. And Mr. Wolford, who's the head of county equalization, that would be the designee for Allegan County. He's someone I have a lot of faith in and trust in. And I think the relationship between the township and the county in terms of assessing and taxing is very strong. So I think this is a good thing.
Any other questions for Mr. Graham? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move to enter into the proposed interlocal agreement and designated assessor contract with Allegan County and authorize the township clerk to sign the proposed agreement on behalf of the township board as presented.
Is there support?
I'll support.
Supported by Aldrich, motion by Helmrich. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Helmrich,
Yes.
Aldrich,
Yes.
Wakeford,
Yes.
Marcy,
Yes.
Osmond, yes. Motion carries. Moving on to our next agenda item under new business is Board of Review term expiration announcements. As always, our Board of Review terms expire each year, and we need to appoint new Board of Review members for next year. Our current members are Jan Shishagway, Becky Israels, and Chris Lozano. We've typically published these vacancies and see if anyone was interested besides our existing members, and go ahead and make appointments. So we want to direct our township manager to post notice of the openings. Is there any comments, anything you'd like to add, Mr. Graham?
I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Are the current members willing to continue? Do you know, or has anyone asked them, or?
I don't know. The township's process, at least the last year and a half, has been we announce the term expirations, the board direct staff to post notice, and I'll follow up with those individuals at that point.
Any more questions for Mr. Graham? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion.
This is Bigford. I'll move to acknowledge the aforementioned Board of Review term expirations and direct the township manager to post notice of the openings consistent with the township's adopted appointment policy.
Thank you. Is there support?
I'll support. Aldrich.
Motion by Bigford, support by Aldrich. Are there any discussion? Is there any? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and call the roll. Bigford.
Yes.
Aldrich.
Yes.
Osmond, yes. Marcy.
Yes.
Helmut.
Yes.
Motion carries. So we can move on to our next agenda item, which is Zoning Board of Appeals. We did have a member resign because they were relocating outside of the township, and we'll have an opening on our Zoning Board of Appeals. So we have to accept the resignation and post notice of the opening. Is there any questions? Mr. Graham, do you have any extra comments?
The only thing I would add to this one is we have several alternates to the Zoning Board of Appeals that have demonstrated a willingness to serve in that full capacity on several occasions. So I would just suggest the Township Board consider that as we move forward. Like normal, that the process is such that anyone's able to apply, but if you all had anyone in mind or would like to reach out to those individuals as you see appropriate, that's the only additional comment I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Is there any more questions for Mr. Graham?
I don't have a question, but if I remember correctly, didn't we have some great applicants as well? And the other thing I wanted to mention was, as you know, we've done this and then sometimes people come and sometimes they don't. I'd be willing to volunteer if you have a pool, if you want them to come and comment, or at least give them the option at the next board meeting. I'd be willing to take that, to call them.
Thank you. Yes. In the past, the Township Board has asked me to remind everyone to attend the meetings, but at that point, it's at the discretion of that individual if they decide or not to attend.
Okay.
At the time that the packet comes out and we have applications that have been submitted, you're welcome to follow up. I think that's definitely helpful, but that's up to all of you at what level you all want to be involved in that process.
Now, I was just trying to offer you some assistance, that's all.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
If you need it, let me know.
Absolutely. Thank you.
That last time round may have been so early in the COVID/Zoom era that contributed to it as well. But that was a good question, Brendan. Good question.
True.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion?
This is Marcy. I'll move to accept Mr. Mike O'Brien's resignation from the Zoning Board of Appeals and direct the township manager to post notice of the opening consistent with the township's adopted appointment policy.
Thank you. Is there a support?
I will support. Aldrich.
Okay, motion by Marcy, support by Aldrich. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Marcy?
Yes.
Aldrich?
Yes.
Bigford?
Yes.
Helmrich?
Yes.
Osmond, yes. Motion carries. And we'll move on to our next agenda item, which are the committee reports. Planning Commission.
Okay. Well, the Planning Commission did not meet in November, but I want to make sure you all know that we're meeting instead in mid-December, next Monday, the 14th. The agenda for that meeting is primarily focused on the Groundwater and Wellhead Protection Act and ordinance as was presented and has been looked at again by our zoning administrator and attorney. We're having two guest speakers at the meeting, the engineer that did the actual layover plan for the groundwater ordinance, as well as the attorney that worked with him on that. So that should be a very thorough and interesting meeting on Monday night. Last Friday, I made a joke before the meeting started, but last Friday, Planning Commission Chair Israels and myself attended an 8-hour, it was the annual winter conference of the Michigan Association of Planners, which I can tell you, it's much more enjoyable when it's in person. It was a very long day, great presentations. The focus was mainly on equitable development and making, having equity and inclusion in your ordinances. And when you're seeking development support, a lot of it was more urban focused, but there was a lot of things that I think especially apply to us now as the Planning Commission is looking at making changes to allow more attainable housing and address those issues of mobility and income imbalance. So it was well worth it. That was my record for a Zoom meeting. We had a couple of little breaks, but they were quite small. And then the other thing I just wanted to throw out, wait, is that, no, I'm going to save that for my open board report. I'm sorry. Oh, no, but I didn't want to say, because in all these conversations in the last week or so with some of the agenda items we had tonight and what Planning Commission is doing, in the past, as you know, it was back in March when we were pretty much, everyone was on board, the planning commission, the board, to finally do a first annual joint board planning commission meeting to discuss issues within the master plan and anything else to make sure there's cohesiveness between the two bodies and shared goals. And then when COVID hit and Zoom took over our lives, everyone just kept saying and feeling, including myself, we've got to do this in person. This won't work on Zoom. I've had a change of heart because so many things seem to be happening in confluence right now. So I would like to throw out to the board, and I will bring this up Monday to the planning commission. I think it's time to support picking dates and planning for a joint meeting between the planning commission and the township board via Zoom. My goal would be early January if it's possible, but we could throw that back to the manager to help it schedule it, right? So I wanted to share that. I don't know if we need to, I don't think we need a motion, but I'm open to any feedback, whether it's now or later. But as I said, I'll be bringing this up again Monday with the planning commission.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Helmrich?
First time since March.
Okay, let's move on to the road commission. Marcy.
Mr. Graham, do you have any additional information for us?
I don't at this time.
Okay, fire board.
November was above average in call volume. Year to date, it is 786, 13% down from last year. And there were actually 8 calls this past weekend in 23 hours of fire, I think. And they were very busy. EMS counts for 60% of the volume. Mid-month was an uptick in COVID-19 calls, but he didn't specify how many, just for HIPAA reasons. Township accounted for 40% of the calls compared to 31% for Douglas and 29% from Saugatuck City. Chief Janik has been especially busy this month. He was asked to be part of the Allegan County Public Health COVID-19 community vaccination task force. And this task force is working diligent to be prepared for administering vaccinations when they become available for Allegan County. So, they're looking for people that can administer these vaccines. It's quite complicated, but they've really come a long way already. So they should be ready to go when we have vaccines available. So rest assured it's being taken care of, and we should all be able to get vaccinated when it's our turn.
Thank you, Stacy. Let's move to Parks Commission.
The chair, Jim Searing, submitted a report to you all that was shared after the packet went out. I'm happy to go into it in more detail if you'd like.
Are there any questions about the report that was submitted?
No.
Okay, we'll go to Kalamazoo Lake Water and Sewer Authority. I guess we're deferring back again to Mr. Graham. Do you know if we ever got the reports back on the master metering?
I have not seen any reports. I think they were waiting for a certain period to pass for it to calibrate or to get an accurate reading of what those capacities were. But I have not heard anything since we made the final payment several months ago. It was brought to my attention that at the last meeting, there was some suggestions regarding asking our representative on the Cal Lake Sewer and Water Authority board to give monthly, quarterly reports. Is that something you all would like me to formally ask him for, or what's all of your feeling on that?
I think that would be helpful. They don't have to be a long report, and they don't have to be an in-person report. They could be a written report, and maybe even as short as a couple of sentences or a paragraph.
Thank you. I'll follow up with Mr. McQuiggan.
Yeah, I agree, because I miss, his in-person reports were always illuminating and educational and helpful, and I miss hearing from him.
Okay. Emergency Services Committee, Mr. Shippa does not appear to be here, but that's okay. Has he submitted any reports, or is there any changes? I know that we've renewed the agreement with.
We entered into a new agreement with Life Ambulance several months ago. I did speak to Mr. Shippa today, and he submitted a report that I shared with all of you earlier today as well.
Perfect. Interurban Board. I think that is in our packet, is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, are there any questions about that? All right, we can move on to open board report, and we will start with Mr. Helmrich. Sorry.
You would. I was taking some iced tea. I keep losing my voice in my office.
Thought it might be scotch.
I just know it's too dark, and I don't drink bourbon. It's iced tea. Two things. One, and I just want to throw this out as a thought, not for discussion or action, but having heard so many comments tonight and hearing more and getting correspondence and more information from the public on interest in this potential, historic district commission. I'm just wondering if either one we want to hold at some point, maybe in January, a public hearing or a meeting specifically on that, or follow our other form and have a couple board members take the lead in looking into it. Like I said, I'm just throwing that out there because we had such a strong response today, more than when it was first brought up just a couple months ago. And my second thing is, I'm going to sound, well, not like a nanny, I'm going to sound like a governor. I just want to stress to my colleagues and our staff and the public, I really truly wish everyone was listening to Governor Whitmer over the holidays, and not having people over to their homes, not traveling long distances, not getting on airplanes. And I bring it up because I just fear that not everyone in our small world is adhering to those admonitions. They're not rules, but I wish they were, as someone who's got I have an impinged immunity system. I'm over 60 years old. I'm in the office a lot, and I just wanted to share that. Thank you. And also happy holidays.
Thanks, John. Marcy?
There you go. Well, I'll tag along with what John just said. I too wish people would listen to, whether they like it or not, Governor Whitmer. I realize things change, as we said earlier, they change a lot, but that's because this is a new virus and the research changes. But I talked to a nurse at Holland Hospital yesterday, who's generally a surgical nurse, but she's been out on the floor, and I keep trying to think of something that we could do for them. We don't want big public gatherings or anything like that, but it's just, it's just very, very serious. And so I agree with John. Wear your mask, please. And take care of each other. That's it.
Thanks, Brenda. For me, I really don't have anything to add. Everything's been said. I just want to thank again Mr. Graham for his diligence and how hard he works and takes such a deep, compassionate look into each one of our agenda items. It's really commendable. I just want to say thank you to Mr. Graham, and happy holidays to everyone. Bigford?
I would just also like to agree with and kind of piggyback on what John said. It does seem like there's significant increased interest in a historic district, and not that we necessarily endorse it or not, but I think that it deserves our attention moving forward.
Thank you. And Stacy, Miss Aldrich.
I agree with that, what everybody else says. I think I don't know how the best way to move forward with this committee for the historic district, but I feel it's going to be a lot of work, and maybe starts with the planning commission, or maybe we put it on the agenda for next meeting, but we need to discuss this further. And I would like to wish everyone a happy holidays.
Thanks, Stacy. Manager report, the most important report of all.
Oh, I don't know about that. But thank you all for your kind comments. I always appreciate it. You know, the support you all show me definitely makes doing my job much easier. So thank you very much. I want to start my report today by just thanking the board again for taking the time to participate in the strategic planning kickoff meeting last Saturday, December 5th. We're now in the process of completing the various activities, surveys, and questionnaires that are being facilitated by Mr. Larry Nielsen, the facilitator, and they will be used to present a draft strategic action plan in January. Please keep an eye on your email for future instructions, and I look forward to the rest of this process. And to poke John back a little bit, please pay attention to those deadlines, because if not, I'll be harassing you. With that, on Monday, the state's partial shutdown was extended through December 20th. Therefore, the township hall will continue to be closed temporarily. I appreciate all of your, the township board, our staff, and the public's cooperation, patience, support, flexibility, and everything else during what has been this really difficult time. And we will continue to do the best we can to provide services and continue to support those in the township the best we can. Individuals can continue to communicate with staff via email or telephone communication. If you do get one of our voicemails, I can tell you, and I'm sure John and anyone else who's in the office can attest, we are checking those quite regularly and doing the best we can to continue to help you. Additionally, I would like to note that the Allegan County Health Department is seeking clinical and non-clinical volunteers to assist with COVID-19 vaccinations. As Stacy mentioned during her report, there is a lot still being figured out on what this is going to look like for our area. But in short, the Allegan County Health Department is starting to put plans in place. So if you are interested in learning more or interested in volunteering, please reach out to the Allegan County Health Department or the Allegan County Emergency Management Department, and they can direct you on appropriate next steps from there. Last week, I participated in a meeting with Dr. Bob Schuschman of the Michigan Tech's Great Lakes Institute. He presented an update on the Harbor Grant project that the Township Board contributed to last late summer or early fall. In short, the work was delayed during COVID-19. However, the 39 sediment samples have since been collected and analyzed. A detailed progress report, as well as an informational website, which will be available to the public, should be completed and shared with all of you by the end of the year. As a friendly reminder, the Township Board initially contributed to this project in an amount of $5,000. I anticipate that the Township Board is going to be asked for additional contributions to continue to move this project forward, so something to put on all of your radar. Staff also continues to compile the necessary materials for the insurance claim related to the bike trail boardwalk just north of Dairy Days off of Blue Star Highway. As I'm sure all of you are familiar with at this point, there was a severe car accident several weeks ago that damaged the structural integrity of that asset. So staff is taking the appropriate steps to try to get that repaired. Lastly, or close to last, in terms of engineering projects, as you all know, we have several major engineering planning projects going on in the township. First is related to the roadway asset management plan. As was probably noted earlier when we didn't have any additional comments, the engineering firm is close to being finished with a draft plan. I anticipate having the opportunity to review and comment on that before the end of the month, with the goal still being to bring a draft plan before all of you in January, and to get the road commission the information they need at the beginning of 2021 for projects to occur in 2022. The water and wastewater capital improvement planning project rate study connection fee review is also ongoing. I'll be meeting with the consultants involved with that project tomorrow afternoon. At this point, we've taken many steps on preparing the 10-year capital improvement plan, which will then be used as the basis for the rate study and connection fee review following that. What is noteworthy about that is our consultants are planning on hosting a workshop for the township board once we get to that point. Similarly to most things, they were hoping to do it in person, but with the public health trajectory not being so good, we are looking at some alternatives for that. So please keep that on all of your radar for the beginning of 2021. And lastly, upcoming projects or upcoming agenda items for January. The township's auditor will present the annual financial reports. I will be working to prepare an annual report to summarize the progress of the township board's goals for 2020. There will be a draft strategy action plan for the 2021 township board goals. Cemetery millage ballot language and Kalamazoo Lake Harbor Authority resolution and proposed amendments should be completed by staff and the township attorney. We will have board of review and ZBA appointments. And lastly, additional discussion about 2022 road projects and road plan update. So there's a lot upcoming in January as well. But with that, I appreciate all your time tonight, and I'm happy to do I can to answer any questions about anything included in my report or other.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Graham?
I have a comment. I think this happened since last month. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to make sure everyone knows, because you may not, but our intrepid building inspector, Al Ellingson, has been back on the job for, I think, a week now. I saw him briefly today, and he actually looks haler and healthier than he did before his surgery. So it's a vital role, and he, like so many of us in the township, because so much is going on, he's busier than ever, but it's good to see him back.
Thanks, John. Are there any other comments or questions for Mr. Graham? Okay, let's move on to public comment. We'll open the public comment period. If you'd like to speak, raise your hand. Try to keep your comments limited to 3 minutes if you're speaking for yourself, or 5 minutes if you're speaking for a group. And if you want to be recognized, please use your raise your hand button or raise your hand. Mr. Graham, do you have anyone yet?
Not at this point. Is there anyone who would like to speak?
I'm not seeing any hands on this side.
Daniel DeFranco has raised his hand.
Daniel, you have the floor.
Daniel DeFranco, 6122 Old Allegan Road. A few things. I did attend the goal setting meeting by the township board, and I just wanted to commend everybody and Manager Graham. A lot of the items were just simply, we accomplished this, and it was just very impressive to hear all that you've all done. And secondly, I would also encourage the board to look into the creation of a historic district committee. I know that a lot of this is wrapped up in the North Shore property, but I think the scope of interest extends far beyond that. I mean, we're talking about Talmadge Woods, Oxbow. So I think that we all should keep the bigger picture in mind and not get too focused on just North Shore. I also think it's a fantastic opportunity to unify a few disparate efforts that are already underway. We have the Kalamazoo River Greenbelt Initiative by the Outdoor Discovery Center. We have the Tri-Master Trail Plan that's being spearheaded by Saugatuck Township resident John Vanderbeek. So it could be a very interesting opportunity to unify a few efforts that are already active. So just putting that out there.
Thanks, Daniel. Is there anybody else that would like to speak during the public comment session? Mr. Graham, do you see any raised hands?
I don't. Is there anyone who would like to speak? We had a few people who joined the meeting partway through. Are any of you looking to speak or share comments with the township board?
I'm not seeing any of these raised hands.
I'm not seeing any either.
Okay. Then in that case, we will entertain a motion to adjourn.
This is Marcy. I will move that we adjourn the meeting of December 9th, 2020.
At 7:37 p.m.
Yes.
Any
I'll
support? Support by Aldrich. I will call any discussion. I'll go ahead and call the roll. Marcy?
Yes.
Osmond? Yes. Aldrich?
Yes.
Bigford? It looks
Yes.
like Bigford, yes. Helmut?
Yes.
Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance and your careful thought and consideration of all the items on our agenda. And we'll see you soon.
Okay.